Hello, everyone. Welcome to Convention Conversations, episode 17, the final installment of this series before tomorrow's convention. This conversation is hosted by the Transparency Coalition. My name is Jen Waldman. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'll be facilitating today's conversation about resolutions concerning EPAs and safety at auditions. So would love to take this moment for everyone who is on this call to introduce themselves. We'll go around the cyber circle and each share who we are, where we're calling in from, etc. So I will go ahead and pass the mic to Sarah.
My computer is running in like robot speed. Hello, my name is Sarah Quinn Taylor. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am an Eastern Chorus delegate, and I am calling in from Osage and Shawnee land, which is present-day Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'll popcorn to Robert.
Hi, I'm Robert Ariza. I'm an Eastern Chorus delegate. My pronouns are he, him. I am currently on the land of the Munsee and Lenape people, and I have major allergies today, so excuse me for constantly blowing my nose this entire meeting. Ryan, sorry.
No problem. I'm Ryan Morales, he, him. I'm on the land of the Lenape people. I forgot what I'm supposed to say. I've done too many of these. Kaylin.
Hi, Kaylin Sakima, Eastern Chorus, he, him, and I am on the land of the Munsee, Lenape, and the Wappinger. Had to do some research on that, so I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And off to Jonathan.
Hi there, Jonathan Brody, he, him. I am in the Catskills in Narrowsburg, New York, on the land of the Munsee Lenape people as well. And great to see you all. And I'm an Eastern Chorus delegate.
Excellent. I forgot to mention that I am not a delegate, although I am a member of Actors Equity for the last 24 years. And I am calling in today from the land of the Wampanoag, Nantucket, Massachusetts. Before we dig into today's conversation, would one of our participants please read our mission statement and code of conduct?
I'll go ahead and do it.
Thank you.
The Transparency Coalition is a group of Actors Equity Association delegates dedicated to leadership and communication that is truly representative of our union's members. We're bringing the discussion of convention resolutions and amendments directly to members through a series of live discussions, allowing members to ask questions and express their support or concerns in real time. We are committed to creating an environment that is rooted in respect so that we can productively create and sustain this inclusive, respectful, brave, safe space to discuss complicated issues. We will always extend that respect to members watching, and we seek the same in return. What we ask is that both the members engaging in conversation with us and the delegates themselves hold these two agreements. One, from the I, and two, confront confusion or discomfort with curious questions. While we are happy to engage in constructive debate, we view harassment and discrimination as a clear threat to free expression and participant safety, and as such, they will not be tolerated. We ask that the members who engage with us give us the grace to say, I don't know, or to get it wrong sometimes. We bring you this series of convention conversations not only to have meaningful dialogue with current and future members, but to learn more ourselves about the important policies of our union and to enhance our ability to serve as trusted liaisons for our fellow union members.
Thank you for that. And before we get started, thank you to everyone who is tuning in right now. If you have questions or comments, please do share them and we will get to them live. And I also want to say to those of you who are on the panel today, thank you for your service to our members. It has been absolutely amazing to watch these conversations taking place I feel very hopeful for the future. I love the sort of maverick spirit of the delegates, and I appreciate so much the willingness to engage in conversation. As a member, it has been very meaningful to me to always receive an answer from a delegate when I reach out with a question or share a concern. And I particularly appreciate the transparency of answers like, I don't know, let me see if I can find out. So thank you so much. May there be more and more discourse that looks like this. All right, so today's topic is EPAs and safety at auditions. And we have 3 different resolutions to be discussing here today. When I was asked if I would facilitate one of these conversations, I very specifically wanted to be a part of this one because where I think it might be helpful for me to provide a little context about the role I intend to play today in this conversation. And that is the role of a devil's advocate, because I don't personally use the EPA system. I'm not an actor who is currently seeking employment through the EPA system. So I have a little more objectivity because I don't have my personal skin in the game here. The skin in the game that I do have is that my role currently is that of a coach to many actors. And at the time that the pandemic shut down the Broadway shows, my clients were in 14 of those shows, and I don't believe any of them, with maybe one exception, began their audition process for those shows at an EPA. I believe they were all going through the appointment system. So I sit in this spot where I am simultaneously watching actors navigate the equity required and facilitated calls, and at the same time watching actors going for the same projects through the appointment system. And my personal mission here is to identify the ways in which these 2 paths are not the same and how we might be able to create a more equitable experience. So that's my personal evil plan here, and why I wanted to be a part of this conversation. Let's start with this first resolution, which is regarding live virtual auditions. So for a bit of background for those of you watching, when the pandemic hit, obviously EPAs and ECCs were no longer going to be happening in person. And so the temporary replacement, or the for the moment replacement, has been pre-taped self-submissions. And this resolution seeks to create another option, which is a live virtual audition, which, by the way, is happening for people with appointments. So would love to talk about this and hear some thoughts from the people on this panel about some of the points made in this resolution, and maybe even your own personal experience around auditioning during this time. Would anyone like to take the floor? Yeah.
I will just add a little piece of, I guess, information that I've found out in this process, because admittedly, I am in the very fortunate position to, knock on wood, have been on a national tour when the pandemic hit. That is probably going back. So I really used this time coming out of a lot of really difficult situations pre-pandemic personally. I had an awesome conversation with my agents, like, hey, maybe this is a universal sign that I just need to sit for a minute. And I'm only just now like, okay, you can submit me for things. And so it's interesting because what I was hearing, and still continue to hear very recently from friends in casting, is that right now there's no way to like guarantee that if you're doing these pre-recorded self-tapes, like the energy and the labor that you're putting into them, there's no way to guarantee that they're being watched. And first of all, just volume, it's a lot of time, but then also because there's no way that I know of, and people on this call may know something different, but like there's not necessarily a way to confirm which tapes are equity members, which tapes are equity membership candidates, and not necessarily, I'm not saying that in like a exclusive way of like, oh, well, mine should be watched first because but when I think to how EPAs and auditions operate pre-pandemic of, hey, if you're equity here, get on the EMC alternate, get on the non-union alternate kind of way, there's no way that I'm aware of in these virtual spaces to kind of monitor that. And so I know for me personally, the project has to be like really, really good for me to be like, yeah, okay, I'll do a self-tape because I take pride in the work that I do. And also once you record something, then it is there forever, you know? So I don't know. I think that if this was an option, it would just start to get like a little bit of the humanity about like back that I think is theater and it's the arts.
And to speak to Sarah's point very quickly, for the record, I'm the maker of the motion alongside Katrina Michaels and Buzz Roddy. I think that there's something that gets said a lot, and I think it's not always used in the most useful way. But I think in this context, it is like if we're trying to legislate good behavior, people will just find ways around it. So if we're trying to legislate that these things were definitely watched, I can think about how much money and energy and resources would go into it, and how easily someone could go, click, oh, it's on, not the right person, tab out. You know what I mean? I don't think we can really legislate good behavior at all, and so that's just, I'll stop there. But that's like one thing to think about is like that is an avenue. I don't know that it's a very fruitful avenue, and I certainly there probably from my understanding in conversation there are ways we could do it, but I don't think that it would be a good bang for our buck in terms of doing what we're supposed to do, which is protect actors and honor their time.
Well, this begs a series of questions. One is potentially not answerable right now, but like maybe we all need to go away and journal about this, which is EPAs. What are they for? Like, what is the actual purpose of an EPA? What is it supposed to do for the people who are auditioning through that system? If, to your point, Ryan, like if what's happening is just ensuring that people's videos are clicked on, that's not really what an EPA is for. It's not for video clicks. So if we can get clearer with our intention and like the way these EPAs are supposed to serve the members, then we can start moving how they happen into alignment with that objective. Brian, you mentioned resources. So I want to definitely pull on that thread. I'm not sure this is where the thread was leading for you, but this is where it's going for me, is the EPA system, the ECC system. In the pre-pandemic world, the financial burden of that system fell on the employer or the casting office or producer or whoever was facilitating the audition. In these pre-recorded self-tapes, the financial burden is falling on the actors. And I would just love to unpack that a bit, because that is a slippery slope for me. As I'm watching this happen, I'm going, okay, so now the actor has to buy an appropriate camera, get the lights set up. If it's a musical audition, they need to hire an accompanist, get a recording, edit, all these elements that they weren't responsible for before. How do we remove, obviously when we're in a digital space, there will be additional technical needs that are really requisite. But how can we eliminate any of those things that could be the producer's burden instead of the actors?
Yeah, I don't have all the answers, but I do think that by doing it live, it reduces the investment of time by a fair bit. If I just filmed an audition right before this, and you're not only talking about the setup of your equipment and doing 3 to 5 takes of the material, but then I have to send it from my phone to my computer, put it onto my computer, get it into my software. And I've done this a lot. I'm in a film class, so I do this every week for a scene, and I'm pretty speedy at it, but I have to put it in, then I have to go over here and do it in this program, then I have to send it off, and it's a lot of extra time. Whereas in the same amount of time, I could have been in and out in 10 minutes or less. And so in terms of investment of time, 100%. I also think what's great about a live virtual audition is that there is a different technological level of expectation for it. And so not only does this help members who are less tech savvy, or members who don't have access to a reader if they need to do sides. Like I have a roommate, so he could do sides with me. But if this had been a live virtual audition, I would have been able to read sides with a reader on their end. And, you know, ultimately, because the tech, I think what a casting director expects from the tech requirements of a self-tape where you're auditioning alongside people who do TV and film, who have TV and film self-tape setups. And not every theater actor is a TV and film actor. And so in a live virtual audition, they're like, oh yeah, whatever your background is, we're not focused on it. It's more theater, it's more whatever you have. You know, they want to see you decently well, they want to be able to hear you decently well, but it's just not the same. We're not fighting for like the top of the heap in terms of technology in the same way. And so I think it makes it a lot more equitable for folks in a lot of ways. And then, no, go ahead.
I was just going to push back a tiny bit on the issue of some people having more sophisticated equipment than others. I think it's an issue whether it's a self-tape or a live audition. You know, if I'm trying to do a live audition with my iPhone and its built-in microphone, and someone else has, you know, a $3,000 microphone, they're probably going to sound a lot better than I do, but I'm not about to spend $3,000 and buy a new microphone. So, I mean, those disparities are going to be there, whether it's live or taped, but it does concern me in both instances. I also feel like the live auditions will be a lot easier to do for straight plays than for musicals, because the conditions to sing well and have good sound in your living room or your bedroom or your closet or wherever you try to do these things is going to be, you know, sketchy for some, especially if some people will have to probably sing a cappella. Some might be able to have someone accompany them. Some might be able to have a recorded accompaniment. And then you're also dealing with those issues live, you know, trying to play your recorded accompaniment and then sing and start at the right place and be able to hear it and have them hear it. I mean, so there are a lot of complications. I don't think, you know, there are things that necessarily couldn't be figured out. But, yeah, I mean, you see my technical microphone dropped. As well as there already are auditions where they are providing recorded tracks for you, which is wonderful. And if we were to be able to, you know, codify that's, you know, all there would be, then everyone would be on the same playing field. But I'm not sure that that's reasonable either. And especially if someone says, well, I don't want to sing Many a New Day, I want to do my own song that shows me off well. Of course, you know, you have to have that option as well. So many issues to be worked out, but it's all worth looking at.
Ryan, will you correct me if I'm wrong? I think these are really important points, Jonathan. In the resolution, there's language in there around maintaining both as options, both a live virtual audition, but also the possibility to submit a pre-recorded audition. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's the intent.
Okay. And let me ask one more question about the resolution language. Is this just about having a conversation, or like getting the conversation started about moving to a live virtual audition, or does the language in this resolution say this is what live virtual auditions would be?
Yeah, the language in it is intentionally a bit vague, because it could be as simple as something that the producer runs already with the software they're already using for their callbacks, which doesn't put much burden on them or on us. It could be we decide to build out a system or use our current EPA audition sign-up system to do it. So there's a lot of leeway in how it happens, and ultimately, because it is it's on recommendation to council, it really can't mandate anything, but it doesn't. There's not much in here that's trying to mandate anything specific, other than that these live virtual auditions. I think the point we're hitting home on it is like, we want these to be prioritized. We want this to be an option that doesn't get bargained away, and not just something, because currently theaters could have live virtual auditions if they ask to, if they like elect to and ask permission to. We're asking for the reverse. We're saying that that it starts with, we want you to do a live virtual audition and submissions for your actors for this cast.
I hear that. Okay, that's really helpful to understand. Like I said, I'm not a delegate, but I would be voting in favor of this, because I think, just from what I've been observing, like just yesterday, I was coaching someone for her live virtual audition, which was an appointment, not something that had an EPA attached. And I'd really like to see, especially during this time where we are so focused, and rightly so, on creating more equitable circumstances for all members, that our members who don't have the benefit of agent or manager representation have access to being seen the same way those who are represented have access to being seen. So that's just my 2 cents.
I also think that this resolution is super important because, like, admittedly, it became even more imperative with COVID and like the virtual world that we were all like shoved into. But the inequities in the system existed before that. Now we're just talking about it, and we have the space and the time to talk about it. So this is one of those, like, I'm with you, Jen, and luckily I do get to vote for it, but like, this is one of those like no-brainers, Robert. Like, yeah, like, it's, if not now, when? Like, we've been waiting. Like, let's use this opportunity as a springboard, you know, because it's still like, I'm a person that's like, be proactive versus reactive, be proactive versus reactive. And still, even voting on this right now and implementing this is still reactive, you know? So let's do it. Let's go.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's interesting because as someone who does have an agent and usually go, you know, in pre-COVID times would just go on my appointments. I really wasn't going to EPAs or ECCs for a few years now. But in this time, since the pandemic has started, I've had maybe like 2 or 3 auditions for actual theater work where they were self-tapes. So I had to, you know, create a tape, but I have not had a single virtual audition for any theater. I've had plenty for TV and film, which was also something that I wasn't necessarily doing before, but yeah, it's a lot simpler because you don't have to worry about timing your music and, you know, the levels and everything, right? But I think it is something that I would want. I would want that option, being that for whatever reason I'm not getting appointments through my agent for any theater work now. But if there was an EPA and I could do a live virtual audition and sign up for it, like, I would absolutely want that option to get me back to work.
Excellent. Sue had a question here, and Ryan, I think you might be the best person to answer this. How does this concept transfer to the regions?
I think, and this I think this is a topic we probably won't go into today because there's two other resolutions, but this whole conversation makes me think about the place of live virtual auditions in a post-pandemic world as well, too. Because I think one thing it does do, and look, I'm a New Yorker for life. Like, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life, but it helps decentralize a lot of our industry because if you, Sue is in, Buffalo? Why am I forgetting? Albany. Sorry, Albany, Sue. Buffalo, Sue's in Albany, but she could, if she's someone who'd be willing to work out of town, she doesn't have to travel to New York to go to an EPA for a show that's in Massachusetts or somewhere else in New England or somewhere across the country. And so it makes me wonder how, I think in the short term, it creates even more opportunity for folks outside of New York to be seen for not just things in their area, but it makes me wonder, moving forward, if this isn't part of a solution to decentralizing our union, which I think benefits everyone. The less congested things are in New York, the better quality of life. The more members we have in different cities across the country, the bigger those theatrical environments can grow. And I think when we have I'm going to get off my soapbox in a second, but when we have a vast network of theaters across the country, because there's professional equity actors in those cities, I think we're a better union and I think we're a better society. So anyway.
Yes, and the future is hybrid. That's what's coming, and that's not just true for the arts. That is true in literally every single industry. The future is hybrid. So we're going to have to figure out now how we are going to accommodate for that. Will our local LORT need to offer live tape? Ryan, do you understand that question?
Yeah. So my understanding is it would be no different than sometimes casting calls go out where they're like, we're only seeking local. So I could be in New York and I could sign up for your local LORT and be a dick and take a spot from someone who, when they're saying we're only hiring local. And yeah, I would think every theater would need to offer live tape, assuming, that's what goes through. But if they're only looking to hire local, then, that clears mud.
Thanks for that. Okay, I think we're going to transition now to the next resolution, which, oh my gosh, I have so many opinions about. In favor, by the way. Make sides available in advance at EPAs. So the background for this is that sides are way more often than not provided at EPAs in advance of the actual audition. This resolution seeks to make sides available 3 days prior to the EPA. And before we hand this over to the panel, I'll just say again, from where I'm sitting, I want to make sure I'm fact checking myself. I have never coached an actor for an appointment that was going to have sides where they did not bring their sides to the coaching. I have never had actors get their sides at their appointment. So this to me is a huge inequity in the current system, and I'm excited about the potential of fixing it. Would anyone like to speak to this resolution? Jonathan?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea too. And just as a little context, this has been brought up before over the years. And the reason it's usually been shot down is that there are concerns about equity posting copyrighted material on our website, and that there could be infringement there, as well as the concerns about new works being disseminated when, you know, producers, writers, whatever, don't necessarily want their material out there for everyone to see. The first argument, you know, as far as things that's copywritten, I just don't think would be an issue. It's not like Equity is publishing it. I think more likely it should be provided by the employer who is auditioning, and they can post it on their own website or make it available somehow, or some access to sites that already exist for agents and everybody else. So I don't think Equity has to even be involved in that. As far as new material, I was thinking about this today in the shower. I was wondering, well, could there be a way that only those who already have appointments, who have signed up, can then get access to the material? Because then, you know, as it works now, if you audition for a new show and they have sides, they post it on the wall and everybody takes pictures of it, and it's certainly out there, but it's only those 200-300 people, 400 people who were there who would have access to that. If we're actually posted on Equity's website, or, you know, somewhere else where the entire membership could have access to it, you know, I can see how there would be concerns there about new material getting out. So I'm not quite sure what the best workaround is, but that was my idea, that there be some limited access to only those who have appointments. It would be unfortunate for people who would still be walk-ups, or, you know, or try and get appointments on day of, but it is a legitimate concern. But I do think, you know, every time I have an agent appointment, I get the sides in advance, and they're watermarked, and, you know, they know I've gotten them, and there should be no reason why that can't happen for EPAs.
Ryan.
I have a little baby thought, which is, how do and I don't know the answer to this question. How do offices watermark their sides, and can we co-opt that to watermark sides based on the person who downloads it? Like, is that software that exists that we could just have? I don't know. I genuinely don't know how that works, and maybe none of us know. Someone who's watching can get in touch, and we can posit that as a solution, because if it's watermarked with your Equity name, you know, then it prevents dissemination and it provides security for writers. So I just don't know what that system looks like.
Yeah, Kaylin.
Yeah, so when I first read this resolution, I didn't understand it. I have never been to an EPA in my life. So I had a wonderful talk with the maker, and my original concerns was, is this an equity issue? Is this a casting issue? Or is this a producer issue? And I presented it that way because I didn't know where the disclosure was falling upon. And the maker made me understand A is not disclosed to casting on who is attending. So it's not going through casting. It's a blanket. You show up and they get who they get. So yes, casting is there, but to my understanding from the conversation, the pre-planning of the information is coming through Equity. So Equity is making the conscious choice not to provide the information to the members because of the legality side of it. If you are doing an open call or an appointment only, that is coming from casting, and they're choosing how to distribute that. So that's why some people get it earlier. And that's what I didn't understand. I don't know if that helps anybody. So when I was talking to the maker, I was like, this sounds stupid. I don't get it, because everyone should get it. And he's like, well, no, it's regulated by Equity. It's not regulated by casting. So Equity is literally making it harder for the members to be ready for success. They're not setting up the members for success. They're actually creating obstacles for the members. And that's what made me kind of think like, that doesn't make any sense. There has to be a way to get through this. And that's why I believe this is the start to break that down a little more, if that helps anybody.
I am not an expert on copyright law, so this is me spitballing an idea, but when you submit your paperwork for an EPA, you have to fill out lots of things, lots of fields, and it would be very easy to add one additional field, which is the URL for the Dropbox that your organization owns, where the sides will be posted 3 days prior to the EPA. So that doesn't even live on the equity website. The only thing that lives on the equity website is the URL to the Dropbox or whatever, platform they want to use, owned by the organization that's facilitating the auditions. So I don't know. It seems to me that there is some way to make this possible. To Jonathan's point, new work is a different beast because, it's new. But with pieces that already are existing, I mean, most of the time, there's the sides that are coming for things that are being revived don't have watermarks all over them. It's the new stuff. And so perhaps, if this gets passed at the convention and ends up in further conversations, perhaps there's a need to divide the conversation between new works and revivals and to treat them differently. I don't know, but a possible solution. Okay, can I say something sorry, go ahead, Jonathan.
I was just going to add that also for any published work, they don't even need a URL or posted sides. They can just say page blah 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 from this line to that line in this particular edition, or for this character's line blah blah to this character line. If it exists, I mean, sometimes it would require an actor then to go out and buy something, but that's not such a terrible thing to have to spend $10-12 to educate yourself a little more on another piece of theater that already exists. So,
thank you for that. The thing I wanted to throw in here is not part of this resolution, but like I said, I have my evil plan to create more equity between agent appointments and EPAs. And I've brought this up a couple times in my studio and people's heads exploded with rage at me for even suggesting such a thing until I explain it. I would like to see a world where sides are provided for musicals as well, not just for plays, where the material that is going to be heard at the audition is not dictated, but strongly encouraged by the people behind the table. And the reason for this, the reason I want to see this change, and I know some of you are like, what? I love singing the things that show me off, is because if you go back to these two paths, the EPA ECC path and the agent appointment path, more often than not, with an agent appointment, you are singing material that is provided. And so you are satisfying the needs of the show rather than satisfying what you think they maybe need to hear. And I know that people like to put their personal stamp on things. So perhaps this is similar to what Ryan was talking about earlier, with you still have the option if you're auditioning for My Fair Lady and they say we'd like to hear people sing I Could Have Danced All Night, and you're like, no, I've got to go with Out of My Dreams, do your thing. But it would be so helpful to have a sense of that you are allowed to sing from the show. And not only that, but that you would receive the accompaniment track that the actors with appointments have and the plunk track. that the actors with appointments have, so that you are not bearing the cost of creating those things for your own audition book. That's just my 2 cents, not included in the proposals, but I had to speak it. Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I actually was going to speak to what Ariel actually put in the comments, right? And if you want to throw that on the screen, because the first place, honestly, that my mind goes with this sort of thing is because I already don't like the inequities of like equity members with appointments, equity members with EPAs, like EMC, then non-member, like it just, I could go on about that all day, but then I like zoom out even more to exactly what Ariel's talking about like people with disabilities, people with like, there's so many other, like in terms of inequity and how much more, like how much closer we could get to true equity with these resolutions is also just like another no-brainer, of course, moment in the, I'm like, yeah, of course. I had a good friend that I was in university with actually, who was dyslexic and always was like, I need this, and it was like very vocal about it, but, and was able, honestly, I mean, it didn't have to come to this, but you know, there's certain title protections and whatever in university spaces, but we're also, as a labor union, I think I see some of those same disclaimers and things at the bottom of casting breakdowns, etc. And so this is like, again, a no-brainer way to push toward equitable spaces, I think.
Jen, can I devil's advocate for a second?
Please.
Would this not, if this were kept under lock and key only for equity members, or as Jonathan pointed out, if we chose to go even more secret with it, only keep it if you can sign up for the thing ahead of time because you had a fast internet or got lucky, wouldn't this further disenfranchise non-members from being able to be employed at these auditions? Because members would have access to tracks, etc., all this stuff 3 days ahead of time or whatever it is, and non-members either wouldn't have access and would be forced to sing from their books, or would have to get it the day of and go run away somewhere and practice the material in the middle of the audition, hopefully not miss their spot. So it makes me wonder, not that this is wrong, or sorry, I'm going on another tangent. I'm going to stop it there. But like, how do we fix that? And is there a way to make it so that this is not locked and keyed, so that it is available to literally anyone? And the fact that our EPA auditions used to be available to anyone to view and are now locked behind a portal. You know, it calls into question all of that for me too.
Yes, and I won't let us get too far down the rabbit hole because, like I said, this isn't even in the proposal. This is just my personal rant. But similar to what we were talking about with the Dropbox, or even just saying, you know, we're going to be hearing I Could Have Danced All Night. It's easy to gain access to things that are being revived. And the truth is, with new musicals, sometimes you don't even sing from the musical at the first audition. That sometimes you do sing from your book in an appointment. Sometimes, not always. I would say less often than you would be singing from the show, but sometimes you do sing from your own book. And I think it's important to maintain that in order to create the equity we're talking about, that it doesn't become a requirement that you have to prepare this material, especially if it's not already in your rep, but that there is the option to sing from the show, because that is what is happening in the appointments and the callbacks, is people are singing from the show. The number of people, just like sidebar, the number of people who I have had come to me and ask me, like, what is the best audition song for Glinda? And it's like, Popular. That's the best audition song. There's nothing else that really does everything that it does. And eventually, if you're going to book it, you have to be able to sing that, because you're not going to get to replace Popular with a different song that you think might go in that spot in the show. So that's just my 2 cents, but I'll move us on.
Before we move on for this, I do want to say, like, I always thought that the same thing, like that if you're going in for something, it just might as well be you sing from the show or like from that character, right? So that that there's no misinterpretation of like what you're going in for, what you want to be seen for, right? But I feel like a lot of times, especially early on in my career, I felt that a lot of people said that it was discouraged because they didn't want to be hearing the same songs over and over and over again, which I found interesting because, again, that's what happens in an appointment setting, right? But then I wonder if there's some, I don't know. I don't know if that's some myth that people just were kind of spreading around, but I always found that interesting.
I have heard that too, Robert. I've heard it from the horse's mouths. And this goes back to our seminal question, EPAs, what are they for? Are they there to be moments of entertainment for the people behind the table, or are they there to provide the opportunity for actors to be seen by people in positions that would move them forward through the casting process? Like, if the answer is we have to be entertained at an EPA, then we like really have to ask ourselves if we need to be having EPAs, because the actors who I know are not seeking to be entertainment for the day. They are seeking employment. They are looking for the path to employment, and that is, in my estimation, that's why EPAs exist. So thank you for saying that, Robert. And I don't know if any casting directors are listening, but I hope they are.
Jen, you're speaking to my soul and literally my feelings behind every time in university when we did assignments of like, well, if you would play this character in this musical, then what would you sing that's in the style of the song? I was like, I would sing the song and I would bring myself to that character in that song. That's what I would do. So thank you.
All right, we are moving on now to the third and final resolution for the day. And I am very, very interested in hearing you all unpack this, because this is a question I've had, but I guess I never really knew how or who to ask it to. So this resolution is about what happens if a member is hurt at an audition that is not held at the union office. There's currently no path for reporting or documenting that an injury or an accident or anything of that nature has occurred. And so this resolution seeks to put a process in place that if a member is injured at an audition, they can report the injury, they know who to speak with and what steps they need to take. And I don't know how many of you were, this might have been years ago at this point, were around for the pledge audition. Did anyone hear about the pledge scenario? Okay, so there was a dance audition that included knee slides, and the choreographer pledged the floor, literally put pledge on the floor so that it would be easier for people to slide. And of course, someone ended up in the hospital. So I'm guessing somebody watching right now remembers this. It was a long time ago, but the conversation that was happening around that, the buzz around town was like, if that happened to me, I literally wouldn't know what to do. So I'm really curious to hear you all unpack this resolution.
Sorry, I was just typing a little comment. Off the record later, I would love to know who that choreographer is, because I would never want to work with them ever again. Or not them again, but yeah. So I am the maker of this resolution, and let me try to sum this up as quick as possible. I was injured at an ECC in 2016. And the injury was a freak accident. I truly believe that there wasn't really a lot that could have been done to prevent it. This was January 20th, winter outside, shoved a lot of people in there. Regardless, it's hot, condensation, wet floor, slip and fall. What are you going to really do? So I was injured and I did not get the support that I needed. And I say it that way because I did not know how or what to do. I filed a claim with the actual studio the next day. Within, I think it was like 6 or 7 days, I went to the Actors Fund and actually sought medical attention. And without going into every single detail, that was where the ball was dropped first because they didn't do x-rays on me. So I want it to be very clear that my specific issue, there was a lot of balls dropped that wasn't specifically equity. But what it came down to is that no one helped guide me through the process. I've called the office. I have literally went down in person trying to talk to receptionists. Hey, can you guide me to this person, that person? Emailed counselors, emailed presidents, executive directors, no responses, nothing. And when I actually did get the general manager's contact phone number, I called and I finally got the information for the limited liability insurance company. Unfortunately, nobody was willing to prove that I was there. There was no documentation from casting. Equity didn't have any documentation. I called the dance studio and they actually get rid of injury claims 6 months. That was their policy. And because of the switch of management, the person that took my injury report was no longer working there. So there was no one to validate that I was actually injured. And it just so happened to be 3 days right before the end of the policy term. So it just didn't work out. So that's a lot of information. But what this does is that it's time for equity to step up to protect the members in an audition and interview areas, because not every member gets the privilege to work. Not every member is actively auditioning, but majority audition to actually secure work. So the first thing in this, it's two things are merged. There are a couple of agreements that actually have language to disclose the liability information at the auditions. But that's not being enforced. So number one, hey, we already have it in our agreement, let's enforce it. The other parts of the resolution is to create a path to guide members if there is an injury or an accident. And what that looks like is providing some sort of informational sheet that says, these are recommendations, this is not a checklist, these are some things that you may want to consider moving forward. Because it is pre-employment, it is not covered under workman's compensation. Although I did hear although there are some companies that will cover you under workman's comp because they negotiated that into their liability insurance to cover auditions. But I've only heard of one company doing that. So the sheet of informational guidance, we're also trying to make sure that if there is an accident, that it's reported to equity with equity documentation so that equity can hold a file of it. And that is to also protect the member in case they need documentation. It's not just the member versus the producer or the company. Equity can say, hey, we have documentation and it's also verified by XYZ personnel. It's not just a 1-versus-1 conversation. Then that information can be collected and that data could see what areas can we improve later down the line. Is it a specific studio space that is causing repetitive injuries? Is it a specific choreographer? Is it a specific casting? Is it a specific room or time of year? With that data, we can narrow down how to best improve working conditions over a long period of time. But it's been bluntly told to me, without that data, it's going to be impossible to try to get negotiations for better working conditions because it's not a priority. So that's where this is coming from, in the shortest response I could give.
I feel like I speak for everyone because I've been watching people's faces on this panel. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. And I'm so sorry that you were alone as you were going through that. My heart really goes out to you. And I want to make sure I am understanding something. Are you saying that the current policy is, for lack of a better, more articulate way to describe this, audition at your own risk, that the people setting the choreography or the spaces which have condensation on the floor are not at all responsible? Is that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
No. Well, audition at your own risk, yes. However, every single agreement has to be covered by a limited liability for their auditions. So there is coverage. What that coverage looks like, that's a whole different story because, different budgets, different coverages, but you are covered. So the challenge is, for my understanding from the people that I've talked to that have gone through a similar situation with me, equity has not assisted the member in the process after being injured. It's, I don't know, call the producer, call the company, call casting. It's we don't have the information. Okay.
Got it.
So what this is trying to do is, we know what the process is. Let's at least give recommendations to someone that's injured, because realistically, they're not thinking about what steps to take and how long they have to take it. They are in a traumatic mindset. And for me, it was two things. One, how badly am I really? And how can I play this off because I don't want casting to know that I'm injured? So it comes down to, how comfortable are you with speaking to the people in the room to say, hey, I'm injured. Can I have your information for your insurance? And then trying to protect your career. And to be very clear, I will tell you, I was helped out of the room because I couldn't walk. I had a friend literally go get me a cane from across the street because I couldn't walk. The choreographer wasn't there. The assistant was doing the job. Asked me how I was doing. Casting asked me how I was doing. The monitor asked me how I was doing. Very friendly. No one mentioned anything about like, hey, let's document this. And then they had the nerve to ask me to come back about half an hour later if I could come back into the room to sing.
Wow.
And I will be 100% honest, I didn't think my injury was that bad. So I said yes, if I can sit down. And so I hopped on one foot to sit down and I sang, and then I hopped back out. So not only did they know that I was injured, they actually called me back to sing and saw me again. Wow. So, yeah. Again, shame on me for even going back in the room, but I just want to be honest that it happens. They know about it, but nothing happens from it.
And Kaylin, you got to give yourself a pass there. This is the culture we work in, is the show must go on. So we have to collectively agree that that's got to change. You did what most people would have done. So I want to I want to respect our time here. It's 6:02. Thank you to everyone who sat on the panel today and for the last 16 episodes. Super special thank you to all of the delegates for the work you are about to do tomorrow on all of our behalfs. We are so grateful to you. Thank you for your service. I can only imagine how stressed out you are right now. So I am taking a deep cleansing breath on your behalf. And thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jen.
Thank you, Jen. It's been
Thanks so
such a
much,
pleasure.
Jen.
I wish we could have just
Great
talked
job.
through every single resolution hosted by Jen Waldman, because it's been like just so eye-opening and lovely. So thank you for joining us.
I'm full of opinions. All right. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.